Good evening, mi gente. This is Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Found in Translation Talk Show, the talk show that stacks truth about politics, today's hottest issues. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's just go right into it. We're going to have an incredible show. This is really the beginning of it. You know how we do. We don't celebrate birthdays, anniversaries like one day. This is really a 2-week plus celebration of a very special time in my life. It marks the 7th anniversary of the Found in Translation Talk Show. And throughout this show, we'll touch on it, but we're really leading up to a very, very special episode, 70th anniversary of the show next week, which we'll talk a little bit about in the show. And the next 2 weeks is really a celebration of all of you, the people that support this journey to not only inform our community about the real deal and just be straight up about it in a way that people can understand and then take actions on, but also a celebration of all the voices in our community that oftentimes are not given the voice and the platform they deserve. Two people that deserve all kind of platforms because they have a lot to say. Two great members of the Found Translation family who are with me today. Welcome back, of course, my compadre, Elbert Garcia.
Hey, ¿cómo está, Ray?
And you know what, Elby? The only thing better than having one of my Dominican sidekicks on is having another two. And, of course, we welcome the prodigal daughter herself, Dionely Reyes, back in the building.
Nothing better than one than two, you know?
There's no question about it. We're very fortunate to have gotten Dionely back, period, since she's last been on the show. She has simultaneously become an IG and TikTok celebrity.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Blessed is the word.
Blessed is the word. Tips later about to build our TikTok acumen, but that's another story. Dionely, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I love being here, being on your show.
No, we appreciate you. And again, this is really the set it off episode of Found in Translation because we're going to touch a little bit about the political headlines. This LB and I were talking, it's something me and LB text things on Sunday. We're like, we need to do a show because it's, we knew it was coming. We have that foresight. We're going to talk a little bit about that. How, of course, Dionely's passion for sharing, how a lot of these things that we're dealing with are relate back to gaslighting. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about how we're trying to cope personally with this whole situation. Netflix, a little TikTok, a little family time. And Dionely's going to let us know who's going to be on later in the show. We're going to have a lot of fun here. We want smiles on our faces. We know there's a lot going on, but we really want this next 2 weeks to be a celebration. LB, you've been such a big part of this journey, brother. So I know us leading up to the 7th anniversary show means a lot to you.
Yeah, man. Look, this past Easter, I remember that Easter 7 years ago where you launched off this journey. Most folks didn't even know what even podcasting was. And you were like, look, and as the old saying goes, if there's not a seat at the table, you bring one, and so that's what you did. You've done it. The list of, when you really look through the list of all the guests that you've spoken to, is pretty amazing. And especially to see like folks who perhaps as the old movie Juice goes, they were locals and then they became, national folks. And in some ways that journey, Found in Translation is part of that journey,
No question about it. Dionely hasn't been part of the journey quite as long, but a big part of the show, not only just being a very insightful contributor, but being a part of the radio part of this journey. No doubt. So I know Dionely, this last year and a half we've all been working together has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to producing my own show. Like, you inspired me to do that and you believed in me. So I appreciate that. I always mention you. I really appreciate you believing in me.
I know you do. The feeling's mutual.
Oh, I thank you. Do you want me to let you know what we're going to do later on in the show?
Yes.
Okay, so later on in the show, we will continue our series on how to support loved ones on the spectrum with a segment featuring autism advocate Maryanell Agosto. And Maryanell will share tips on how to support autistic children cope during COVID-19 season. And Carol Obando-Derstine will join us later to share tips on electrical safety and resources to help our families. We also will preview next week's 7-year anniversary episode. That show will feature a talent extravaganza on the MIT family. Oh my goodness. I'm so looking forward to that.
It's going to be awesome.
Ray, we are going to set it off because those in power who have failed to protect us from COVID now want to blame immigrants for our problems. This is textbook gaslighting. So if you like, I could also define what gaslighting is, because I
Very
know.
quick, yes, very quickly for folks. So that would be good to settle us back, ground us in that conversation.
Absolutely. So gaslighting, I know you guys probably heard it here and there, but you're not really sure exactly what the definition is. So gaslighting is an insidious form of persistent manipulation and brainwashing that causes the victim to doubt him or herself and ultimately lose her or his own sense of perception, identity, and self-worth to the point where he or she must rely on the gaslighter for a sense of reality. So gaslighting can occur in personal relationships, at the workplace, or over an entire society. So this is something that's happening to us, especially, minorities, immigrants. That's definitely happening to us, because something gaslighters do is they repeat a lie over and over, and then they think that will magically become the truth. And that's not the case. We got to stay grounded.
So this weekend, I think it was, and if people that follow us on Twitter at FIT_talk show, I tweeted out something related to the discussions that were happening in the Midwest and the plains around the fragility of a lot of our meat processing plants. So a large chunk of the pork and chicken that we eat comes from the breadbasket of the country, middle America, right? And they talk about these plants in North Dakota and Iowa and Grand Island, Nebraska. And the truth is, this is why you gotta watch Found Translation, is that the media does not really highlight this. But the reality is those plants are extremely diverse and have high immigrant, whether they're Latino, Ethiopian, Asian, high immigrant populations. Because the reality is, who are the people that are going to do the most dangerous work for a little amount of money and the least amount of worker protections? It's going to be our immigrant population. So while the story was kind of like this generic story related to, are they, there's a lot of COVID cases, they're not closing these places, how they protect these workers. The story really about how the most vulnerable people, not all, but a significant number of Latinos and immigrants were the ones being put in harm's way. So then what the Smithfield plant, some of these other plants were doing was starting to say, well, it's their fault because they go home, they live in little apartments, they have a lot of kids. They were trying to make it sound like it was the workers' issue, not that they weren't getting, not that they weren't getting sick at work where they're piled in like sardines all day, chopping pork on a line. So I text LB saying, you know what? They're going to start. This is the beginning. They're going to start blaming us. How are they going to spin blaming us for this problem? Sure enough, President Trump this week signs an executive order blocking all immigration. But of course, the day after, the exception for the farm workers, because we have nothing to eat without them, the exceptions for the nannies, the exception for the medical people, the computer people. Wow, it really adds up. Wow, it turns out the immigrants are a big part of the solution, not the problem. So, LB, I know watching this from a political theatric perspective, not only is it infuriating, but it's very illuminating that this utter failure of leadership, when it started with blaming the Chinese and that causing a spike in Asian American hate crimes, and now blaming immigrants for going to work or going home or having a family, the passing the buck of this administration for their failure to protect us as the leaders of the federal government is disgraceful.
Well, it's almost as if, Ray, like every time that, people get a whiff of maybe the administration not being able to handle this, he's got to pivot and give something and say, hey, let's distract, right? Or pivot and say, like, let's find someone who we should be more angry at, or who's someone that we always know we should be angry at, whether it's these foreigners, quote unquote, or these other folks, the folks who are in the most vulnerable situations, right? And it's amazing, especially because, like, he does this, or they do this, literally a good week and a half, after there's been a ton of media talking about, like you said, the folks on the front lines, everyone from folks at the retail, folks at the grocery store, the farm workers, but then also the medical professionals, right? A whole slew of medical professionals who are, who are in terms of either foreign born or children of immigrants who are working in doctors and hospitals, right? Who are working in some ways in some of the medical labs to try to get, a vaccine for this, right? All these things because of their failure to not just in terms of, to failure to do two things, I would say, right? To have actually a public health infrastructure to actually respond to this, right? So some sort of testing, some sort of like way to make people do that. And also to figure out how the hell people can pay their rent, their mortgage, and also to keep the economy, right? Because I mean, everyone talks about reopening the economy, but the truth of the matter is that there's still a lot of people making money out there, right? Unfortunately, it's the big folks like the folks who can cover overhead, right? The Amazons and those folks, but don't sleep. That economy is still roaring for them. So what's going on for us, right? What's going on in terms of for workers and most people, right? Like how can they be able to survive, right? So their inability to actually come up with an answer. And again, not complicated mathematics, not like some like big scientific formula, right? But like simple things of like, hey, how is it that I can, can you give me some relief so I can, pay my mortgage or make sure that like my rent is free this week or that, or that at least a bill collector stopped for a month or two, right? Like all those are things that the administration has a potential hand in doing. And we know that they can, right? Because we know that through executive order and through administration rules, they can do stuff, right? I mean, we saw this, earlier this week when we saw education, the education head, Betsy DeVos, write a rule that basically made sure that undocumented, that colleges couldn't provide any relief, right, to undocumented students, right? To me, which is increasingly always the most asinine of things, right? Because here you have most undocumented folks, they're not getting financial aid, right? They're working all types of hours to try to pay tuition, right? And colleges are now being given some money to like help with like, things like childcare costs, to get to provide extra food for their children, for their students. And basically the administration goes the extra mile to make sure that they can't get it, right? As opposed to like the way the law was written, it was really up to kind of colleges to figure that out, right? And except again, it's not about just a failure of a lack of leadership, but in some ways leadership in the negative direction.
Oh, they've gone out of their way to nickel and dime immigrants throughout this whole process. No question about it. When it's, as I said on the show last week, it's not even pennies in the grand scheme of things. It's atoms of pennies. I mean, the amount of money that they're saving is negligible at best. Dionely, I know we're going to get into the gaslighting thing. But I want to talk to you, Dionely, because when I'm so infuriated about this, how they're treating immigrants and the fact this is even part of the conversation. Because I think about, I go back to my Dominican people like you and Elbert. Entre Boston, I mean, all over the country, of course, particularly between this corridor here, entre Boston, where we're at in the Philly area. I think about, first of all, the Dominicans that we've lost because of COVID.
Yeah.
And not because they're not taking care of themselves, but because they're the ones working.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that are driving livery cabs still. Todavía they're working at the bodega, the work, whatever it is. Workers, Assemblywoman Carolina Reyes volunteered to go back into the emergency room as a nurse in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
The woman didn't have to do that. Dominicana, who's in the New York Assembly. I think about all of our friends think about all in our area, Dionely, all the Dominican business owners, people working hard, still out here working, cleaning business buildings, doing all this stuff. There's Dominicans in those plants in the Midwest working. Mm-hmm. So, Dionely, I know as a woman with a proud immigrant family that taught you that work ethic.
I'm an immigrant.
I know. Y'all are the ones that are keeping things going. We should be rolling out the red carpet for y'all.
You know what's happening is this racist narrative, how Trump and his administration, they have normalized it where people could just talk down and speak negatively about immigrants and just have immigrants be the scapegoat for the problems in this country. That helps to keep companies and keep other government leaders to not care about immigrants, to not to just treat them as second-class citizens or treat us as second-class citizens. So that's the thing, that racism is not just somebody calling you a certain name, I mean, I can't repeat the names, but it's in the system. It's interwoven in the system. We can see this every day by the way that Trump and other, like Senator Tom Cotton, he said that after Trump announced his executive order, he said, and I quote, 22 million Americans have lost their jobs in the last month because of the China virus. Let's help them get back to work before we import more foreigners to compete for their jobs. So he's like drawing like a parallel between the virus coming from China, like an immigrant virus.
Being racist right there from the jump, right?
Immigrants coming in to work. So he's kind of like saying, kind of like we're a virus as well.
And by the way, I've spent a fair amount of time in Arkansas. The two big things in Arkansas to bring in the dough are pig farming, agriculture, and Walmart. Who do you think works at those places? Who do you think slopping pigs and working at those big Walmart factories? And let me get into this, LB. I'm going to let you set it off in a second, brother. So the other part of this, which I know has been fascinating, it's infuriating, but also very fascinating, is this very small, but yet very visible fringe group of virtually all the most extreme supporters of Donald Trump, who are having rallies, who are being egged on to have rallies, put themselves in medical danger, calling on governors to reopen their states, when in fact all the governors are doing are following the Trump administration guidelines. So there's a lot there, a lot of psychology there. But the one thing I want to say before you set it off on this, LB, is there's two things I want to say. One is this proves that racism hurts everybody, because this is an illness. When you're willing to put your own self on the line for these knuckleheads in power,
crazy.
And the other thing is, and I say this with all due respect, it's clear that white people are not used to being told what to do, because we're handling. We have a lot more balance when it comes to deal with this situation. They're really having a hard time. So anyway, LB, talk to me.
No, well, they're having, definitely the folks who are having a hard time. There's no doubt about that. And you see all these memes about folks, quote unquote, in terms of especially like the right wing or GOP folks saying like folks got to follow the rules, and folks got to understand those kind of things, and suddenly like you're told to follow the rules, and suddenly now they have to do that. But don't sleep, right? If people think that this sounds very much like 2010, when we suddenly randomly saw all these Tea Party protests, pro-up and stuff like that. I mean, you got to follow the money, right? You got to follow it in. And then there've been a couple of articles this week, Politico and New York Times, talking about, well, who's funding these folks, right? Who's actually providing, in some ways, like the training and the funding and the encouraging, right? And sometimes they're meant to seem very, very local, but really they're not, right? Really, a lot of folks are really kind of supporting and kind of doing that, right? And why are they doing it, right? Because part of it is because they want to put, in some ways, some pressure, right? They want to put the pressure in some ways on the states, and they also want to have their cake and be able to do it too, right? Because the administration wants to be able to say, it's not our fault, it's the state's fault. Right? But they want to be able to say, well, it's the state's job to get the testing, right? Not our job, right? Well, in the meanwhile, while they're controlling commerce, while they're stopping, face masks, right? Like just yesterday in Miami, like there was a whole bunch, there was like more than 1 million face masks that were seized by the federal government. We have to talk about drugs. It used to be like cocaine and other stuff that's being seized in Miami. We're talking about face masks. It's face masks, right?
Swabs,
I feel like Iverson,
we
right?
can't
like,
figure out, this guy runs this country so bad, we can't get like swabs, dude. Like Q-tips, long Q-tips.
You can't
figure this out. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy, right? And so, but again, this idea about reopening the economy, right? First of all, there's a little bit of a hypocrisy, right? Of all these, of a bunch of these folks in their cars with their masks, talking about please reopen the economy. But reopen the economy for who? Right? Because
who's going to be put on the front lines? Who's going to be put in the front lines? Think about in Georgia, fam.
Right.
Who's on the front lines when everything opens? Who's going to be who cuts hair in Atlanta? Who works at bowling alley? You know what I mean? Like it's working people and heavily minority. And by the way, the Latinos are still working the agricultural. The Mexicans and the Latinos are the ones picking the peaches and the tobacco and all that in the South now. So we're still on the front lines, and a lot of our folks are very thankful to still be working. So they're not complaining. But we gotta understand we're all in this together. And this ain't a hoax. You gotta open up your minds and think for yourself. Dionely, give us a lesson on ground us back in this gaslighting conversation. This is gaslighting in the extreme, girl.
Yeah, absolutely. So the gaslighters, they just always want to push a hidden agenda, even though like it's not so hidden to the victims. Once we open our eyes, it's not so hidden. But our problem is, I feel like, is that we look to change the mind of the gaslighter, of the person that is oppressing us, that want to keep us down, instead of us coming together and us empowering each other. So this is something that we see all the time with this anti-immigration administration.
No, it's true. And the other thing too, I think that's also really important to do is like part of this whole gaslighting thing too is to like layer it upon layer it upon layer it, like poniendo más presión, right? Putting more pressure, right? Because it's like, Because we already know folks are having issues, right? We already know that folks are struggling, right? And again, if you're a person of color, if you're a low income person, like you know somebody, you might be in denial, but you know somebody, right? Especially in those spots, right? So it's like, mira, you're reading people's comments about that on Facebook. You're knowing if you're a DACA student, you know that you got the Supreme Court, verdict that's hanging around there that doesn't even know whether or not you're going to be legal or not. Right. I mean, there's all these things que está pasando, and it's like you just add it and add it and add it. And it's just like, coño, like, when is it going to stop? When are people going to actually, just have some common sense? Right. Because like you're living in another world.
That's the thing. Like you said, like gaslighters, they layer and layer and layer it. They don't just attack you one way, they attack you all different ways. And then they want to just get exhausted. Like you're just like, your mind is spinning. You don't know which one to resolve or which cause to fight for first, because there's so many things that are going on and that is being played against you. So
and this conversation continues to be exhausting, but it's important that we point out the truth.
Yes,
and
definitely.
that even these people that we disagree with diametrically, politically, in this whole situation, we don't want them to get sick. We don't want them to die. But at the same time, and I'm telling this to my people, is that this goes beyond politics. We need to protect ourselves first in this whole situation.
Pero fíjate this, though. This is the thing that also gets you when you really, really think about it. Okay, all this talk about the economy is not because people also want. I mean, there's a small bunch of folks who are like definitely in terms of like pro-Trump and whatever he would say, they would go, right? But there is a real contingent of folks out there who really want this economy to open up. Pero fíjate, they would rather risk dying at work, right, than not having a job. And what does that mean? Like, to think about it, like what kind of situation you have to be in.
That's right.
To be like, coño, I would rather, I need this job. I need to be out there. Whether that job is for like your identity, whether that job is for like, in terms of to pay the bills, they would again rather risk that. And we can't even address that, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about too. None of it, whether it's government or even like some other folks, are not being able to address people's basic need to be able to figure out how to pay these bills, right? And so, again, I think that there's a bunch of racist people out there that's doing some crooked stuff. But the other reality is that people talk about the economy. You open up the economy and everyone's sick. There's going to be no economy anyway. Like the economy, people are the economy. Yes, right? Like I can't cut hair if everyone's at home sick or in the house.
3 million people in the emergency room. You're not going to have a good economy. There's no question about it.
Are you going to cut hair in the hospital? Right, when someone's on a ventilator?
No question about it. And you're listening to Elbert Garcia and Dionely Reyes on Founded Translation. We got to take our breath because we're heated. We setting it off this week. This is again the kickoff really of a 2-week celebration of the 7th anniversary of Founded Translation. And so we not only want to continue to inform you about the issues you care about. Of course, we're very passionate about the political headlines because y'all need this information. We got to keep it real with y'all. And we need to empower you so that you can express this, the real deal, to your friends, your associates, the people that you influence, so they can understand why they have to get involved in the political process, why they have to raise their voice, and why they have to speak truth to power in this whole situation. Dionely Reyes and Elbert Garcia and the rest of our Found Translation family are about that. Before we bring in our very special guest, just going to continue our series about autism awareness. Dionely, I want to go to you because one of the things that I shared before we started airing get on the show was that I really admired how you've handled this COVID-19 situation, because I can see on social media that you're taking this time to utilize this time to do things, to grow. So I wanted to give us some advice. How have you fixated on focusing during this time in the positive way that you have?
Well, I am the type of person that I always focus on what's the silver lining. I always have this quote in my mind in Spanish, no hay mal que por bien no venga. So as bad as something may seem, is preventing something worse from happening, and there's a lesson behind everything. So you just got to live it, just be grateful, just focus on the good things. Like now that I'm at home, I guess to spend a lot more time with my 6-year-old son, Arturito, which I love dearly. He's growing up so fast and I love it. Yeah, okay, he can't go to school, but I get to spend more time with him with the online learning. And I'm teaching him and I'm learning things. They're teaching our kids how to read differently than how they taught us. So that's interesting. And then thank God that we have social media. Thank God that we have WhatsApp, FaceTime. We have that technology where we could keep in contact with our loved ones. And now we see who really cares about us, who's really hitting us up to see how you doing, what's going on. You know, so those are all positive things. And there's Instagram. You can have fun on Instagram. There's, you know, TikTok también.
TikTok, I like that. Give it. I like how she tried to sneak that through real quick, Dionely. Give us a tip. How have you become you are a TikTok sensation? Let's keep it real.
So
how have you done it, girl? Give us
TikTok since they. Bueno, vamos a ver. I had no idea how to use TikTok. I had to have my cousin's wife send me a video, like her showing me, you know, how to use it. And then your first one, you're a little nervous. Then like second, by the third one, I'm like, oh yes, I got this. But you won't get it on your first. You got to find one that you like a lot, that kind of resonates with you. And then you won't get it on your first or second try of saying it, because the people don't know what TikTok is. You got to like mimic what the audio is saying. But by the third or fifth try on the same audio, then you end up getting it. And you gotta live it. You gotta feel it. You know that it got to my head because I got kind of good at TikTok. So I'm like, I feel like an actor.
Kind of good. She's so humble.
I put it. I'm like, I think I'm an actress now. So I put in my description, actress, radio host, author, and actress.
You know,
but I took it down. I'm like, oh, I know. I took it down. I could only act for like 15 seconds. And then
Elbert, you know, one of the silver linings of this whole thing is that old school hip hop heads like you and I, with the IG.
Yes.
I mean, it is our comeback here, brother. I mean, the DJ battles, even the reggaeton guys got it in last Friday night. Much respect to Tiny and Looney. I saw Big Daddy King play Sunday, bro. It was fan. Remember you and I had gone see him with my brother and all that?
Oh my God, yeah. No one can do it. No one rock it like me.
Fantastic. So LB, I know you've been enjoying the bringing back the old school a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. I mean, especially, I go on and I tell my daughter, I'm like, hey, let's listen to some good music. You know, I sound like my parents back in the day. Yo, tú no sabes como.
I know the rapper. I get so heated. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm like, how come they're not on here giving D Nice love? Like these young boys are paying tribute. They never go on and give them the respect. They killing it. They're killing it.
And then you see, unfortunately, you see like what happens when old school heads, aren't into technology, right? In terms of some of the false starts, and things like that. But Teddy came out strong the second time.
Even not just the tech part, but even like the bullying, right? So like with the Looney Tiny thing. So like Looney, obviously he does his thing, guys. He did all daddy stuff and don't know my back in the days. But then because Tiny as the young boys, like more Tiny's people were on Tiny were on IG. So like Osuna saying, oh, my man's winning, so and so's winning. So it threw Looney off. So he was like, yo quiero tocar 40 más. Of course, he's got like a million songs. But it's like, dog, you did your thing. Like, you don't have to be like stressing. But anyway, let's get to our other special guest. I really appreciate the response we got when we announced it'd be the month we were going to dedicate a series of programming to the loved ones that we have in our lives on the spectrum. And, to be very honest with you, we had a guest who was fantastic lined up for the first show. And when a great friend to the show, Maryanell Agosto, shared her story about her son, I see, Maryanell needs to share this information with us. So she was on the first show and she reached out to me and said, Ray, we really have to have a segment dedicated to how do we help our loved ones during this time. This is such a unique time of isolation, of social distancing. So we wanted to have you on the show as part of a regular series. Maryanell Agosto, welcome back to Found in Translation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we appreciate you coming on. So we'll find out what you're doing too to try to what are you doing to keep yourself sane during this whole season?
Oh my goodness! So I was really enjoying the conversation backstage because I'm a huge reggaeton fan, and I was caught up with Vico C.
Oh, you're too young to know who Vico C is. Come on, mama.
What? I was 13 when he came up. So Vico C, Wisoje, Dinois, Playero.
Está bien. Before Nicky Jam went to jail. I mean, we're going way back.
Oh my goodness.
Lovita, did you see his Netflix show? His Netflix movie?
No, I have not.
My wife watched it in a day and a half. It's outstanding.
Is it on now?
It's like a biopic. He plays himself as an adult. He's got a kid. It's like 10 episodes. It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. I haven't had a chance to catch up.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
So I do listen to a lot of music, and I'm very versatile when it comes to that. So, I don't discriminate. Bachata, reggaeton, merengue, salsa. There's some opera somewhere in there. So, whatever I'm in the mood for, I listen, to a lot of music, and that's what's been kind of getting me through.
Very cool. So, Maryanell, you wanted to, and I know Dionely and Elbert, who have family, children in the spectrum as well, have some questions, but you put together a list for us. So why don't we start with the first one? Tips to help our loved ones on the spectrum cope and thrive during the COVID-19 season.
Absolutely. So tip number one would be to set a daily schedule. Many of the children in the spectrum are creatures of habit, and they're very set in their ways as far as a routine goes. It's very easy to kind of maintain a routine when they wake up, they get ready, they go to school, they're 8 hours in school, they come back home, do homework, shower, eat, do some homework, and then go back to bed. And that seems to be, kind of like a good routine. So then now what happens when school is out of session? So we have to kind of bring it back to, a little bit of what they used to do in school. Of course, if you're a parent working from home, it's going to be very difficult to kind of emulate what happens in school. And I think it's very important for me to say at this point that no parent should take a full role as a teacher. It's impossible to do. For the neurotypical children that are not affected by autism, it's difficult, let alone a child in the spectrum, which makes you want to be a special ed. And it's funny because I was talking to my special ed teacher earlier, and I was like, hey, I'm just, I'm trying, and I can't figure this out. Like, there are ways that I know I could teach it, but I just don't seem to have it. And she's like, honey, I'm trying to be like you when Almani's in school, and you're trying to be like me now that he's at home, and it just doesn't work. So I need you to be you and come to me whenever you have questions. So tip number one, get a set schedule that works for your kid. And I have a daily schedule for my son, and I'm just going to show it real quick. It's something that I do on a daily basis, depending on how my day goes. Currently, I'm not working, so it works very well. And as you can tell, like at from 9 to 11, we have breakfast, we get ready, we go to class at 9:30, we have screen time. And then at 11, I go into like full throttle with like instruction. And then I kind of mark the things that we were able to accomplish for the day. These are my reminders of some of the things that I can do to kind of, get him going, get him motivated. We have lunch, we have 1, 2, 3, we have books, we have chores, we have kind of, music therapy. We have all kinds of things that I know he likes and enjoys. Then we have dinner, we have some screen time, we have outdoors, we have walks. So I try to kind of have this on a daily basis. And I start my instruction at 11 because I feel like it's also very important as a parent to have some me time. And my me time happens in the morning and it happens at night. I want to be able to have my cup of coffee. I want to be able to sit down, jot down what I'm doing for the day with my son. When I was working, it was like, what am I going to do with work and also my son? And to kind of hold myself accountable to the fact that I need to keep Almani on track. So tip number one will be to create a schedule that's going to work for your child. Do speak to the special education teacher, because she or he is going to give you everything that you need to know as far as a routine goes. So then you're able to bring some of the school components into the household. Tip number two, you're not a teacher. If you're not, you're not, and that's okay. What I decided to do, rather than teaching how to read, the math, I'm not good at those things. I'm not good at teaching those things for my son. And I'm okay acknowledging that. So what I do is that we go to class, we'll have the teachers teach him that. We'll have some transferable learning skills that I could use. But for the most part, I'm focusing on the vocational pieces. And it's not too early to do that. So if you have a child in the spectrum that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, minus 12, focusing on doing like the basic chores, focusing on cleaning, focusing on identifying the items in the cabinet. If you're coming from the grocery store, just have the kid unpack some of those things and kind of label those things for you. Where do they go? What are they used for? What do we do with the water? We drink it. What am I doing right now? Drinking. So you could actually make a lot of the things that you do on a daily basis, you could make them teachable moments for your kid. And I'd rather focus
I
on
love that. Yeah.
And you're sort of answering the question I wanted to ask you as a follow-up, but and I like this concept of the visual, but what are the other ways you're creating that schedule in his that he understands? Because I know that that kind of giving people that structure is going to be really important during this time.
Absolutely. Another way for creating a schedule will be to have it in pictures. And I also want to be very realistic. I'm not a picture person, and this requires some work. But if you are, go at it. Well, this way. There we go.
A lot of crafty found in translation heads. So I know Christina Vega's watching. She's a great a scrapbooker, So there's a lot of people that have that skill.
So the funny thing is that, the first thing you do is wake up, you brush your teeth, you get ready, you have breakfast. So what I also do is that I kind of show him that and show him the order in which things get done. So then he has an idea of what he's kind of, getting himself into. And there's some negotiation. My son personally hates brushing his teeth. So then what I'll say is like, we'll do this first and then we'll have breakfast, or we'll do this and then we'll have the iPad. And I'm able to kind of negotiate things with him that way. And the reason why, like addressing and treating this differently than you would do neurotypical, when you're dealing with a kid that's not affected, it's like, go and brush your teeth, like knock it off, go get it over and done with. With a kid that's in the spectrum, they don't quite understand it. They don't want to do it. It's a non-preferred activity. They don't want to do it. So then there's aggression, there's defiance, there's a whole host of other things because their brains are wired a little bit different. So the way I address needs with my son are completely different than what I do with my daughter. So there's some negotiation. And when you have pictures and you have a detailed schedule, then he knows exactly what he's getting himself into. And even though it's not preferred, he knows that after he does something that he really doesn't want to do, there's something nice that's going to come about it. And I will tell you more times than not, he goes through with it, even though there are times, just like any one of us wake up in a bad mood, he does wake up in a bad mood sometimes. And there's some aggression, and we're addressing those issues as well. But if you have something written, if you have something pictured, if you're constantly speaking to them, because as you should, just because they have a different way of processing things, it does not mean that they're incapable of listening to what's going on. So that will be my tip number 3, is actually keep them in the loop.
Excellent. Dionely, I know, the more as I'm listening to Maryanell talk about this, these are tips that all parents could be using.
Yes.
During this time. So Dionely, jump in this conversation.
Absolutely. Because now I spend a lot of time now with my son at home, of course. I spend a lot more time with him and getting him into that routine and all of that. But one point, and every moment being a teachable moment, because we don't know when we're going to have to get back to work and he's going back to school. So this is a great time to spend as much time together and enjoy every moment and talk as much as we can and get to know each other more and just have every moment be a teachable moment. And so I love a point that you made, which you've made a lot of great, amazing points. How you said that you take time for yourself in the morning time, at nighttime. That's so important because a lot of people, they're just running on empty. And it's like your cup runneth over. You take care of yourself and you have more of yourself to give. So absolutely. I think that's great. That's a great point.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to highlight because in our culture, we come from a culture like our kids come first.
Yep.
Our kids come first, second, and third. And yes, as they should. But you need to put yourself before that, because if you're not completely available mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, if you're not in all of your dimensions, then your kids will suffer. So when people say that your kids come first, I'm like, absolutely not. I come first. I have to take care of myself first in order for my kids to then reap out the benefits of having a mother that's strong, that's fit, that's healthy, and that is completely available and present in their lives. So that cup of coffee in the morning, it's amazing. And that time to reflect and really kind of map out how your day is going to go, it's great because it gives you the ability to stay on task, and it also holds you accountable to that.
So
it's
all-
amazing to jump in there, LB, please.
Well, I was gonna say it's also, like it's that old age thing that they tell you on the airplanes, right? Like if put on the air mask, put on the air mask first on yourself before putting it on to somebody else, right? Like you can't help anybody if you can't, you can't help your most loved ones if you can't be in a position like to be there, as you said, Maryanell. And so I think that's a really important point. And I think obviously the point that's been said, a lot of the stuff around teaching and learning, there is something basic around that, right? That we do, right? So in some ways, this is a situation where we're trying to kind of remember what's the whole point of this education that we're bringing them through, right? It's not tests, it's not stuff, it's skills, it's ideas. I guess my question as people who have, we're seeing a lot of folks, families reaching out, talking, using Zoom, doing those things. And so I'm just wondering as someone who has family with autistic, like nephews and nieces and things like that, especially in this time of COVID, like how do you do that, right? Like, because for me, most of it's been like a very present in-person kind of interaction, right? But now being separated by that, how do you do that, right? Like how do you maintain or figure out those relationships? And I know everything's a work in progress, but I'm just curious in terms of like, how do you even go about even figuring some of that stuff out?
So the funny thing is that now it's just, my immediate family in my household. So when it comes to interacting with my sister or my brother or my mom, whenever there's that interaction, then I welcome the opportunity to then have the kids join into the conversation. However, my son does ask for people. So when he does ask for someone, I don't care what you're doing, I'm calling you, I'm Zooming, and you better be available because he's asking for you. And typically children in the spectrum are, and this is kind of like ironic, they have a difficult time socializing. However, they're able to develop very profound relationships with people that are closest to them. So when it comes to my sister, he has a profound relationship with her. So he'll ask for her. He'll ask for my grandmother, for his grandmother, my mom that's in Puerto Rico. So I do call right away and I'm like, are you available? If not, when are you going to be available? He's asking for you and I need you to show face. So for the most part, I kind of lead, I kind of let the moment lead. If there's an opportunity, I welcome it. If he does ask for one of my family members, then I welcome that as well.
Wow, you're listening to Maryanell Agosto, advocate, a mom for autistic children on Found in Translation. She's brought so much to the show on these appearances. Maryanell, give us one more tip for our families out there that are looking to support our children and loved ones on the spectrum during this time.
Absolutely. I think the next tip, and I'm actually looking at a few here, but I'll actually pick the one that I feel is most important, is managing and leveraging the relationship with the siblings. How does that work? And it's the funny thing is that for my daughter, my daughter is the oldest, and I essentially have been telling her Almani's entire life that even though I love her and I love her very much, that Almani will always get more attention. And I think it's very important to have those conversations with the siblings. More likely than not, they will understand. It's been great with Aulani now, my daughter, now that she's grown and she understands. At the very beginning, it was a little difficult because she would inquire, like, all these people are coming for Almani, but no one is coming for me. So how do you leverage, how do you manage those relationships now that they're both in the same household, they both want to be in the same space, one is using the computer, the other one is watching TV. So how do you manage that? And it's given me an opportunity to be actually more fair. Because if my daughter is watching TV and my son is on the computer, then I'll say, Alani, you can watch TV here, or Almani, you need to go elsewhere. You have a mobile device and you can go wherever you want. So I'm able to kind of discipline more fair and across the board. However, I think it's very important to have conversations and include the siblings into the education, into those teachable moments, because you're not available 24/7. If there's an opportunity for that sibling to teach about doing a particular chore, welcome that.
This is so important. What Maryanell said, it goes beyond supporting just our children on the spectrum here on Found in Translation, because what she just said around being straight up with her older daughter about this whole situation and how they as a team had to manage the situation as a unit, that's leadership. And so one of the things that you know, and there's lots of levels to this whole political situation, this pandemic. But one of the things that I've also tried to weave into these conversations on Found in Translation is that this is about challenging and really thinking about what leadership really is. And so part of the fixation on this figure that now we're having to deal with, right? That's actually showing, when it comes down to it, no leadership, was this idea that there's a theory that that's what leadership's supposed to be. The rich white guy on top of a gold mountain that bosses everyone around, yells at people, fires people, and that's what tough is. And that's what being a leader is, when in fact, what Maryanell does every day is what real leadership is about. Not looking for glory, not looking for glory, grinding it out, doing all the things. I mean, look, this woman's drawing comic books for her son, okay? And she said to herself, I'm not really into this, but hey, I got to do it. And when it came to it, for her mental health, for the benefit of the entire unit, she had the leadership to sit down with her daughter and say, in the same way I've got to put some extra boots on the ground leadership for our son, you have to do for your brother. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to take on more leadership and mature and grow. And guess what? Instead of talking around it, because look, the easy thing would be to ignore that conversation, right? But like I say, the easy thing would just be to ignore it. And it's sort of this underlying issue. And so many times our loved ones, our children, they just want to be told straight up what the deal is.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So that is such a profound lesson, even going beyond parenting, is about leadership. In the same way that 2 months ago, if this guy in DC had said, look, this is going down. This is going to be tough. We're going to have 2 years, but this is the game plan to get out of it. And if we all work together, we can get through this. For a minute, you know, that would have been a lot better than this whole what's going on now. So that's so many lessons there, man. You know, stay here because you're going to be part of this conversation. But thank you so much. This ain't going to be the last time we're going to talk about these loved ones. And you've brought so much in these 2 appearances. You brought so much to the table. So you're going to come back. But, you know, I want to bring on this person not only because she's got a lot to share, but LB, when you and I started with Found in Translation way back in the days, this is how sad it was. Let me bring her on. Our homegirl, Carol Obando. Carol.
Hi.
What's going on?
Hi, Carol.
And I think you were excellent. I really applaud you. I watch your videos that you're posting on social media with your family, and you're a role model, an inspiration. So thank you.
Well, Carol, you're an inspiration too, and not only a great friend. I love how the Lehigh Valley's taking over the show. It is wonderful. And by the way, Colombia, Carol representing for that as well. But I want to thank Carol publicly because, you know, as LB and the very close people in my life at that time, 7 years ago, God, I was so obnoxious when I started podcasting. I was so passionate about it, and I still am. I'll talk about it all day if you want. But I really just felt it was important for me. I just thought it was a platform to fit me, my personal persona and style. But I just thought it'd be really important to have these forums. And now this is how we're all. Now it's like, of course, it's obvious, right? But Carol was such a welcome ear, and it's so bad because when we had like 80 people a week listening, I could tell we had one fan in Lehigh Valley. I could tell by the regions, and it was Carol that would download the show. So there would be weeks. So you don't understand, Carol would be like, all right, she listened this week. There's 2. Maybe she passed it along to a friend. Or if she got busy, nobody listened this week from Lehigh Valley. She got busy, no problem. So, but I just want to thank you, Carol, for your leadership and your friendship over the years. So I just wanted to ask you before Maryanell leaves us, how did you get out of that conversation? Because I know that there's a lot of lessons in Maryanell's wisdom there.
Yeah. I love Maryanell, and I really appreciate the work that she does to spread awareness of autism. So thank you for that. And a lot of times we don't hear from Latinos that have families like this. So it's refreshing to see a different kind of family and trying to figure things out and trying to offer just a great perspective, a good outlook. So thank you.
So before we say goodbye to Maryanell, hopefully next week, you know, the show next week is going to be a 2-hour extravaganza. I got singers, I got rappers, I'm trying to convince a certain Dominican Selena impersonator to make an appearance. We'll see. I have Hollywood actresses doing one-woman shows. I got a poetry slam guy I'm introducing tomorrow. You know, follow the social media. So, but I also want people like you both and LB, of course, people that aren't, you know, we're not like creative people in that sense, but I just want you to pop on here for a few minutes. So please stop by next week and just say hello. And we want to rep for the different networks of friends and supporters. So Maryanell, any final words for our found in translation community?
So I would just have to say thank you so much for the opportunity to bring me on and to talk a little bit about what's it all about living with autism. My son will be 10 years diagnosed on the 26th. And if I were to tell somebody, how I felt when he was diagnosed, I was devastated. And as time went on, you kind of sort of start finding what normal looks like. And what normal looks like and feels like, it changes as, my child has grown and developed to be the person that he is, and it will continue to change. So for folks who are, living with autism, and you may be at 12, you may be at 5 years, you may be at 2 years, you may be at 20 years, always find ways of educating yourself and never lose hope.
Maryanell Agosto, autism advocate and autism mother. Thank you so much, Maryanell. You'll be back soon.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you. Before we get in this conversation with Carol around some of the sort of safety and resource tips she wanted to share with our Found in Translation community, Dionely, let people know where they can subscribe and support Found in Translation.
Definitely. So support Found in Translation Talk Show by subscribing to Found in Translation Talk Show anywhere you can download a podcast, including iTunes, Radio Public, and now Google Podcasts. Subscribing and writing 5-star reviews helps the show move up in the directory rankings. So please give us the 5-star rating.
No, we need to get that love, people. I'm telling you, it's very helpful. And for Android people that have those Samsung phones and Android devices, Google Podcasts now has an app on the Android side, so there's no excuse. Just type in Found in Translation, and they can support the show. So Carol Obando-Derstine, Carol, a great supporter of the show and so humble. And so she reached out because she had some resources she wanted to share with our community, particularly those that live in the state of Pennsylvania. Much respect to your fellow GACLA commissioners. A bunch of them were on the show recently. So the Governor's Advisory Commission on Latino Affairs is a wonderful group of leaders in the Keystone State. So Carol, share with us the first resource you wanted to share with our Found in Translation community.
So there's so much to talk about, right? But because I work for an electric utility called PPL Electric Utilities, and I was thinking about how I could be helpful. I am on this commission, and all the commissioners are doing their thing. A lot of them are with social service agencies, and I'm thinking, how can I be helpful during this COVID, this pandemic? And one way is to talk about energy efficiency and also about safety around electricity, because so many people are working from home now. And so we know that there are electric hazards, and I am just always trying to be as helpful as I can in my community. So I just wanted to share some tips. I know that some folks are just really consuming a lot of electricity right now, staying at home. And we just want to offer some tips, like avoid overloading outlets. Having too many things plugged into the outlets can cause a fire. And sometimes I have seen frayed wires. So wires that the plugs that are like the coating has come off. Frayed wires cause fires. So it can be very dangerous. So we want to make sure that also that you unplug appliances when not in use to save energy and minimize the risk of shock and fire. You can do things like never plug a space heater or fan into an extension cord or power strips.
That's a good one.
I didn't know that.
That is a good one, because we have heard of many fires started like that, and other things. Let's keep going. So making sure you use proper wattage for lamps and lighting, and doing things like keeping papers and other combustibles at least 3 feet away from space heaters and other heat sources. And if you do have, right now we're not using space heaters, but it's still a evergreen message to have to keep in mind. When you use space heaters, try to keep them at least 3 feet away from curtains or children that are playing, or dogs, or any type of person that could accidentally knock it down, and that could start a fire.
Well, I got one. I don't know, Carol, if you would agree with this, but what happens when we have these things, right? So we have these things, and they come with the we're charging devices 24/7, whether it's phones or devices, right? And our kids are charging. So what happens is because these come off and on, sometimes you use the wrong charger with the incorrect cord. So it's so a lot of times I'll feel these things on my kids' iPads and stuff, and they're hot because they're the wrong one. So those little things you gotta, because it doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't. Some of them are not built for certain levels of wattage. So there's a lot of little things because now we have the kids at home all the time.
Yeah,
that you have to be more pendiente about. So give us another one, Carol. This is really
you definitely do. We want to make sure, even things like tripping. Right now, I have recording this. I have things plugged in, and I'm a hazard right at this moment, at this circle that I'm at right now. But on a daily basis, people may be having these trip hazards all over their house. We have more people that are at home that are doing their work and lots going on, and you add pets onto that, and so it could be a dangerous situation. So we want to make sure that everybody stays safe. And the other things that I'm talking about more the things that we do inside, and also like energy efficiency. So that's another thing that I want to make sure that I remind folks, because there are ways that we can save electricity and save money at the same time. So we want to make sure, like, for example, I work for a company called PPL Electric Utilities, which is based in 29 counties in Pennsylvania. And we have a great website. It's called Save with PPL, that gives a lot of good energy efficiency tips. And another one that I have mentioned in many places that I go to talk to people about energy efficiency is the little things like unplugging those devices and the charger for your phone when the phone is not connected to it. You just leave it there plugged in, and those are called vampiros because they're drawing energy little by little, and you are paying for that in the long run. Yeah. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind. And there are lots of little ways that you could be more energy efficient while working from home now. Everybody's home. Everybody's mostly eating. I have done the takeout and trying to support our local businesses, but most of the time
very carefully. You have to do that very carefully, my friends.
Yes,
No
that's true.
Yeah,
but people like could be using more the crock pots, and if you are going to warm things up or cook, if you could do it in your maybe like little toaster oven instead of having to turn on your full oven, that's another way that you could save electricity.
Is the crock pot good instead of the oven?
So it just uses more energy. So if you have just something small that you're warming up, I have a toaster oven and I use that a lot. And I could even bake, something smaller in there and not have to turn on the whole full oven, because that's gonna consume more energy.
What about the crock pot? I'm sorry, I have this crock pot I bought.
Are you concerned? Is it that's a fire hazard? It's good to think about it. No, that's what my wife was killing with the crock pot.
I got it 6 months ago. I haven't used it yet. But
the crock pot is more efficient.
Okay, good. Yes. Okay, crock pot.
2 thumbs up. Now there's like something. It was like como la olla pitadora. What is that called? The pressure. It's like a pressure cooker. It's like it's like the all pot, I think it's called. Yes. It's like something new that is everything. Yeah. And
well, those air fryers. Do you have an air fryer, Carol?
Yo no tengo uno, but mommy has one.
Life changing, my friend. Life changing.
Yeah, mommy has one. And the best French fries ever.
Got to shout out, speaking of French fries, Frank Bull, who is a restaurateur in Philadelphia. He's got the Latino sushi place on Jordan Avenue. Fantastic place. He's checking it out. And Maryanell Agosto is asking about the air fryer. It'll change your life, my friend. And your sidekick at Gakla, Nelly Jimenez Arevalo, is saying hello. So a lot of good people. Nelly, got to get Nelly back. She's a great guest.
She's awesome. She's
a spitfire. She's a crackerjack. She's awesome. So Carol, yeah. So let me ask you a question. Well, actually, Dionely, do you have a question for Carol? Because it seems like now this is starting to create some concerns. I know you're with your son all the time, and I know we're always concerned about, especially boys. They get into all kind of situations. They want to see how things light up and all kind of stuff. So I know that these little tips are very valuable.
She answered my crock pot question. That was very important. So it is efficient. And I didn't know that if you left the charger plugged in, even if nothing's connected to it, it still draws energy. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Sí, eso por eso lo llamamos vampiros, vampires, because it's just sucking, like, and it's, you know, it's running up your bill, and
Well,
it's like anything, right? Like, okay, one little charger here, big deal, but the thing is, you got 4 people in the house now. Maybe 4 people have chargers, you know, charging their cell phones. Maybe there's tablets, there's computers, there's other things. So everything adds up. And I'm the one that I'm like going around turning off lights and, you know.
Oh, that's me in my house. I'm terrible with that. But Carol, you know, yeah. Jump in. No, Dionely, jump in.
I was gonna say, how about actually replacing the fuse box? Like, I'm not an electrician, but like the fuse box, could you upgrade it to like, oh, this fuse box is only for this much wattage, but could it be upgraded so that
I'm gonna have to talk to an electrician about that. But but what I can say is there are things that you can upgrade in your house, like lighting. So LEDs are way cool. So LEDs are very energy efficient.
No, and this is
less energy than regular than incandescent light bulbs.
Carol, there's an important conversation because not only, hey, look, I mean, most of us are, you know, the budget's a little tighter than it used to be 6 weeks ago, right? So anyway, you can save $10, $20 helps. And also good for the environment. That's the other part of this conversation.
Yesterday
was Earth Day. I'm wearing green.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was so many things going on, and we're promoting next week's show. I didn't get a chance to talk too much about Earth Day, but these are important things. Carol, you know, I real quick, I wanted to, outside of your work with the utility company, which covers a huge chunk of Pennsylvania, and obviously the base of it there in Lehigh Valley has a huge Latino population. Do you have any thoughts around how this COVID situation is impacting either your customers, the Latino community you serve there in Lehigh Valley that you wanted to share? Because this is impacting us. First of all, I don't know if we've ever gone through something that impacts all of us over a long period of time like this. So there's so many elements, but the Lehigh Valley is a very interesting community.
Yes, it definitely has impacted our customers tremendously, and we are in this together. We understand that this is a difficult time. So, for example, the PPL Electric Utilities, we are not terminating anyone's service at this moment. We waived the late fees. We also contributed $500,000 to our Operation Help, which is a customer assistance program. We also gave $300,000. The PPL Foundation gave $300,000 to different funds, COVID funds throughout the service territory that we're at. We're in 29 counties to try to help, because we understand this is a very difficult time, and our hearts are with all the people that are suffering, and so we understand the challenges that we face, and we also have a lot of our employees working from home because of that, and we can't have every single person work from home because we have line workers and we have people that have to be outside making sure that we continue to focus on the reliability of the grid, but we are making sure that we take measures to make sure that we're safe and that they are safe. And the one thing, though, that I do want to mention, because we have been talking about this a lot throughout our service territory, is if people do see line workers outside, to please maintain that physical distance, at least 10 feet. So please remember that.
It's a lot of our brothers and sisters out there on the lines, literally and figuratively. So, Carol, we really appreciate it. As we wrap up the show, I want you to stay here because bring Elbert back in this conversation. First of all, shout out to a great sister of me and Elbert's, Yvonne Maldonado's in the chat. I believe it's Yvonne's birthday today. So if it's yesterday or today, so Yvonne, un saludo. I mean, you're a great sister of ours. That's what the St. Louis, Missouri area. I don't know how Puerto Rican got to Missouri, but that's another conversation for another time. So her brother's even crazy. He ended up in Korea, I think. I can't even keep up with the guy. Every 6 months he's in Australia, Indonesia. I mean, anyway, they're international, the Maldonados, but you know how much we care about y'all. So Carol, again, you being part of this journey for many years, and Elbert, of course, my brother, and Dionely. So I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to start with you, LB. What are you looking forward to next week's anniversary show? What are you looking forward to?
This is the thing, and I'm one of these historians. I'm going to be looking into the crates first of all of the old, of the podcast, right? And I want to see who shows up, and
yes,
and if we can like draw like some like like episode 25 or something, like find out like one of these things before that, and just kind of see. You've had some really great guests, and so I just want to see in terms of the community and the family kind of come in and see and. And I want to hear people's experiences, like, in terms of this, like, Ray called me. I didn't even know what this podcast thing was. Now it's blowing up. Everyone knows what it is. And especially like, it's like us here on live streaming. You talk to people. We were one of the first folks to be on Facebook Live and do this show on Facebook Live. Now, a whole bunch of folks are out there. So I'm curious to see in terms of people's experiences. Like, well, Ray asked me to be on this thing, but, I don't know it's Ray. So we said yes because we love him. But and kind of hear some of those kind of expressions.
Yeah,
so
and I think Carol was one of these people where it happened probably like 20, 30 times during the journey where I introduced the concept of podcast to people and then they became addicted to them. And I think Carol was one of those people because I think I might have been the first or second she listened to. She was like, oh, they're so cool. I listen to them and there's so many interesting things even beyond obviously our show. But so no, it's been a lot of fun. So Carol, what's thinking about next week? What are you looking forward to either seeing on the show or just thinking about how the show has sort of helped mark the time here over the last few years?
Yeah, I just love like reminiscing. And so I look forward to that. I love that. I love getting together with friends and just talking about like, how it all got started. So that I love that. And that's what I would love to see. And I'm really proud of you. I know, yes, I remember having lunch with you at Tierra Colombiana and talking about this, and I'm just really proud of where you've taken this and your journey and where you want to go. And I'm really grateful that there's a platform here to get people engaged and talking about topics that affect the Latino community. So thank you.
It's interesting, and I love the comments, and I agree with you all, of course. But the talent is going to be really interesting next week. This is an interesting format to sing or to rap.
It's gonna be like Santo Domingo Invita. That's what it's gonna be like.
It's gonna be interesting. So Dionely, talk to me. The talent showcase is gonna be fascinating to observe next week.
That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm looking forward to. The variety of people and talents, and I also would like to hear like where are they now? Like where were they then the first time they were on the show, and what are they doing now? Like how have they grown?
That's a really good point. Yeah, no, and it's going to be really cool because, and Elbert knows this. One of the things I love to do is to bring people from different parts of my life and networks together. So Carol's kind of part of my Pennsylvania Latino leadership crowd, and of course Elbert, a dear friend from college, and Dionely from the Philly crew, and so we've got people from, literally people that are in the grind in Hollywood trying to do their thing that aren't from Hollywood but went out there to do their dream and they're moving on up, and we got local people that are doing their thing. We got people from New York. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. So Elbert, Dionely, and Carol, thank you so much for joining the show. There actually is going to be a show in between this episode and next Thursday that I'm going to do on Tuesday with Zoe Colon, a political activist in Florida. Next Tuesday's show will really be kind of our political nerd show for the week. So we can deal with all the political headlines and some of the political stuff. Zoe really wants to. We're going to have a conversation next Tuesday on Tuesday's show about Black and Latino coalition building. So how do we work together in our communities? So she's bringing an African-American woman on the show that she does organizing with in Orlando, Florida. And so we're going to have that conversation. So, just kind of sound off about some of the political stuff. Thursday, the show's about y'all. The show's going to be bringing on people that have been our regulars and our strongest supporters. And then, people going to do their thing. I'm really intrigued. I'm really intrigued how people are going to. I had a spoken word artist who I was planning on inviting reach out to me this evening, say, hey, I don't want to invite myself, but it would be nice. And I'm like, you were on my list. It's just there's so many people. And that's why we're going to dedicate the show for 2 hours. So Dionely, Elbert, and Carol, thank you all so much. Elbert,
looking forward.
We have to figure out, Elbert, you got to help me figure out what we have to do to recruit our Dominican Celine impersonator to make an appearance. Elbert, is it a Mangoo delivery? Like, what is it going to take, brother?
Well, we'll find out, first of all, who their moms is. That's always a powerful force. And then we'll just figure something out,
Primo. You mentioned this as a 2-hour long show. Will it start at 8? And
Yeah, it'll still be
later,
it'll
or
just
will
be
it
from 8 to
8
10. It'll be
8
made
to
for 10
Okay,
because some of our California people are going to come on a little later. We got artists from California and Arizona that are going to come on. So Dionely, you only know about 2% of the world here we got. So you don't understand the people that are trying to squeeze on, and the political people, the music people.
Well, you were
Everyone's trying to get on.
Journey at this event, at this one event. So you know a lot of people. I know that much.
Yeah, I mean, we could have just done 2 hours just to the Dominican crew. You know what I'm saying, LB? You know, just that whole segment. So no, it's gonna be a lot.
And we're doing the best that we can, because I'm sure if this wasn't for Corona, we'd be doing like one of these, like, you know, roving cameras around the country.
Oh, this would have been a tour. Are you kidding? There would have been a Camden episode this weekend.
Oh, Camden.
Elbert, Dionely, Carol, Dionely, don't leave us for another year to become a TikTok superstar.
No, I'm here.
I appreciate that, Elbert. You know how we do. And Carol, it's been, you know, one of my regrets, Carol, is that it took too long to have you on the show, because you've always been a big part of the family, and you do a lot for so many people in a very humble way. You don't take any bows, but you are a fantastic leader in your own right. So thank you for joining the show, giving us the tips. And we appreciate everyone watching and listening to Found in Translation. You know, we just stack truth here about what's going on in the world, and bringing some wonderful voices to the table, like our friends that joined us today. So thank you so much, and keep enjoying our anniversary 2-week celebration. Peace.
I will. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.